Kia ora koutou. Ko Bruna Banya I aira ni te maunga, ko Boyne te awa, ko Neil toko iwi, ko Quinlan toko hapu, ko Brian Baru rawa, ko Niall ni giala o ko tipana rangatira, ko Denise Quinlan aho, na reira teina koutou, teina tato katoa. So, as you've guessed, I'm not originally from New Zealand. I came here for 6 months in 1991, and clearly my planning skills need a bit of fine tuning. I'm delighted to be here in Aotearoa, and I think, you know, one of the things that's been really clear to me in the last 16 months has been there isn't really anywhere else you'd want to be on the planet at the moment, given our situation with the COVID pandemic. So we've been talking to people all over the motu and all over the world. Actually, we've been asked to talk about resilience, and a lot of organisations outside education are realising that they don't really know what resilience or well-being is. And I think it is useful to kind of remind ourselves that what we're talking about is, for us, well-being is mainly feeling good and functioning well. Not always. There's always days where that doesn't happen. And resilience is having the skills, the tools, the whānau, the connection to culture that enable us to cope with adversity and get back at some point to mainly feeling good and functioning well. And we know that there are some times when it takes a long time to get back. You know, I'm thinking about things like bereavement. We don't bounce. Sometimes we crawl slowly back. So, but there is stuff we can do. And so what we want to talk about today is this idea that we are all riding the lockdown roller coaster, and there will be good days and bad days. And the way I've been thinking about it is, you know, on the up days, enjoy it and know that you can lift other people who are down. And on the low days, it's really helpful to remember that it won't last forever, and allow others to lift you up, or either have a timed wallow or use some of the tools that you know work for you to get back up. But I think one of the things, so I'll come to the idea that I think it's important that we do allow ourselves to acknowledge that it's not easy, and that sometimes actually going, this is horrible, is really important. But the other piece of this roller coaster that I think we really need to acknowledge for ourselves and for our colleagues and or for our whānau is that not everybody comes into the roller coaster in the same state. Some of us came in with good strategies to cope and really supportive whānau situations. I came into lockdown after 8 weeks of a non-COVID viral illness, being a recovering but vulnerable pessimist, and Greg is nodding, and being, if not completely burnt out, at least crispy around the edges. So, you know, I'm not really the person you'd pick to be within your bubble, am I? You know? And so I'm really grateful to my long-suffering partner for cutting me some slack. And that's the real thing I think is important in lockdown, that there is no perfect, there is no right way, but we need to cut each other some slack, and we need to lower the bar on the tough days. And that brings us to this whole idea of, how do you know who you need to lower the bar for? And how do you know how people are doing? Because unless we've got a language to be able to effectively communicate, you know, it's in the dark. And so whether you talk about how full is your cup or how full is your tank, I realized I've been saying, I came into our kitchen one morning and I said, I was making coffee and I said, it's a pancake day. And my husband said, what do you mean? And I said, I feel really flat. And he was like, oh, good. I looked at him and he said, no, I thought you were angry with me. So, you know, there's loads of reasons why it's helpful to know and to let people know. And to, you know, one organization we were talking to around what language you use, and they said, do you know what we're going to try is just a number. No one has to describe to me their misery and say, what's wrong? They can just say, look, I'm a 1. Yeah. So we've got to make it easy. And I think this is really important, that we know we can think about 2 things here. One is, what language works for you? What language is going to be easy for you to communicate with the people who matter to you at work and at home? And then the other side of it is, none of us came up the lagan in a bubble. Sorry, that is a Northern Ireland expression. None of us were born yesterday, and we all have strategies we know work. So what we're going to do now is give you a chance to think about, firstly, what kind of language do you already use? What kind of language might you make a deliberate decision to use in your community? What's a strategy that works for you, that lifts you when you're feeling down? But coming back to language, I just thought I'd share with you something that a teacher from Atatahi shared with me that she has in her classroom. And it's just 3 lines on a board. And the students are invited to just put a cross where they are when they come in the morning. And it's sleep. Are you still asleep? Firing on all cylinders. And then there's mood, and it goes from flat as a pancake to on top of the world. And then the third one is workload, and it goes from pretty chill to under the pump. And it's just a really, really easy way for her to get a read of the room. And I think they move them into the staff room as well. And that's part of normalizing conversations about mood, energy, all of those things. And I think that's really helpful. I'm sure there's a really nice graphic of it somewhere, Greg, but I'm not going to find it right now.
What's the other 2, Denise? I'll write those into the chat.
There's sleep.
Yep.
And
still
that's
asleep.
Kind of still asleep to, bringing, on top of the world. No, still asleep, firing on all cylinders. The next one is mood, flat as a pancake, on top of the world. And then the third one is workload, and that's pretty chill to under the pump. And I love how simple they are, but how practical they are in terms of, being able to communicate a lot of really important information that people might otherwise struggle to have a conversation about. And in our breakout group, one of the things we talked about was, some people get voluble when they get stressed, and you hate us because we're real pain. Others of us go really quiet, and it's harder to work out what's happening. And if you've got people who go really quiet, it may be really helpful to have just a number like a 1 to 5, that they don't have to tell you a story. Yeah. So thank you for that. And I will share my screen again, and we will march on because we can. Oh, she said, I'm having a moment of thinking. Is that looking okay to you? Okay, great. Okay. Good. So let's march on and think about a few strategies that I thought might be fun to talk about today. Chosen these for the kind of lockdown stage because even the most robust of us and even the most optimistic of us have moments where we feel really negative, catastrophize, get really stroppy and stressed, and have to make decisions and still want to function. So let's talk about what can help us with that, okay? So the first one is ruthless prioritization. And I'll give you a little tweak on what we used to talk about, which is, so we know that resilient people focus on the stuff that matters and the stuff they can control. And oh my God, are we all sick of hearing everyone from sports people to whoever talking about control the controllables. And the bit that becomes really obvious is, yes, we need to prioritize the bit in the middle there. But the truth is, that's not small in most of our lives. So we actually need to think about how are we going to prioritize the stuff that matters. And what we've been noticing as we went into this last lockdown was it's really important to be clear about what is most important and what is least important, because if everything is urgent and important, that is the ultimate recipe for overwhelm. So having priorities is really important for ourselves. Communicating them to our teams is really important for leadership. And we've been reviewing ours often twice a week because it's been a really fluid situation and stuff's been changing. And it's really important to communicate that, because there are things that are more annoying, but it's really right up there when you slave away on a piece of work and you bring it to somebody and they go, oh, we've moved on, that's not important. So you earn a lot of goodwill by keeping people up to speed with what the priorities are if they're changing. And then lastly, the bit that we often forget is that self-care belongs in here, because nobody else about me is going to no one else apart from me can prioritize my self-care. Like my colleagues love me, but none of them are at home making sure that I get some exercise, go to bed, don't drink too much. That one's on me. So I have to prioritize self-care. So what we know from the burnout literature is that human beings need, to avoid burnout, human beings need to have proper breaks from work each night. We need breaks each weekend where we don't think about work, and we need bigger holidays. And in many industries, that's your annual holiday. Thank goodness in teaching there are term breaks. But let's come back to the daily break we need. In the old days, the good old days, you went home from work and that was it. No one could get you. Now, most of us answer email, check our email on our phones, we answer texts, and there's about 5 other platforms that we might be on. That's not a break from work. And so we need to be really mindful of our boundaries for getting away from tech, but we also, we need to think about not thinking about work, because if I take the dog for a walk and while I'm walking, all I'm thinking about is work and what I have to do, or who I'm really brassed off with and what I'm going to tell them tomorrow, that's not a break from work. And Greg will laugh because, we've been talking about the fact that when I came to New Zealand, I was a rock climber, and that was just the perfect distraction, because you cannot think about something else while you're rock climbing. It's just, am I holding on or am I falling off? And now, I haven't been rock climbing lately, and it's the cryptic crossword, and I kind of feel that's a bit sad, but it is true, and it works because when I'm doing it, I don't think about anything else. So getting an effective distraction. And I think I shared with people before that my husband is a drummer, and at the start of lockdown last year, he was really scared of his patients. He's a GP, and it was the first time in 25 years I'd ever seen him scared of his patients. And so we'd worked out a whole system, and he was coming home in his PPE and taking it off at the back door and all that kind of stuff. And then he would go upstairs and bang on the drums, and learning the drums and being obsessed by it really helped him stay sane in that period. So learning something new, having good distractions really matters. And, one of the things that a lot of people talk about is the idea of a third space or decompression strategies and moving between work and home. And a lot, we all lost that in lockdown. And so, I don't know if you walk out your front door and go around the block and come back in another door, but we need ways to mark the difference. And what we're hearing from research coming out of the UK and the States is that the people who've coped better in the long lockdowns are actually people who have families and kids at home. And the people who have coped least well are the kind of mid-20s who are living in a small flat and don't have anyone else with them. You know, and they realize that part of it is families tend to have a bit more space to get away from each other, but also having small children means you have to stop working. You got to feed them, you got to put them to bed. And that actually is a blessing in disguise because you stop for a minute. So the thing that we want you to think about is, what's one thing that you can do for your own self-care? And I'd like that to come with a time frame of where and when you might do it. And how can you help your team prioritize and practice self-care? And I know you can't go and hold them by the hand and take the glass of wine out of their hand, but let's think about what you can do to help your teams. The whole concept of ruthless prioritization kind of emerged because Lucy Hone, whom I work with, is a natural ruthless prioritizer. And I am the opposite. I'm, oh yeah, no, look, but this is interesting. Oh, and what about this? I need my big list. And what we realized was I was getting really overwhelmed. And so I'm not a natural ruthless prioritizer, but I have had to learn it as a skill. And I have to say that actually going, okay, there's 24 plates up there, put 20 of them behind and don't look at them and focus on the 4 you need to focus on, has been really helpful. So ruthless prioritization isn't always easy, and it's not something that comes naturally to some of us. But ironically, the people it comes least naturally to are sometimes the people who need it most. So even if you think it makes you feel a bit, give it a go. So look, I kind of feel almost like I can't believe I'm going to talk about this again, because it's so obviously important. And I've said it so many times in every forum I'm in, but it's really easy when we are in this situation to end up thinking about what's miserable and what we're not able to do and how difficult it is. And that doesn't help, because we know that being able to focus on the good is really important for our resilience and well-being. And at the start of lockdown, I think I was a 1 out of 5. And I've got a habit with my partner in the mornings of a couple of cups of tea and what are you grateful for and what are you looking forward to? And he would say, what are you grateful for? And there was a couple of days where all I managed was either nothing or the overthrow of capitalism. And that was it. That was just all I managed. And it was really good because I was able to say to him afterwards, I'm not grateful for anything. I'm grateful for nothing right now. That doesn't mean there isn't stuff to be grateful for. It just means I'm an ingrate at the moment. And it's just a sign that I'm not in a good space. And I will now take myself off and go and look for something to notice. And it really is about, where is your attention? And so what we talk about with this is, sometimes if the good stuff isn't coming to you and your attention isn't going to it, you've got to go out and hunt it. So Greg, do you want to unmute and chat to me about this? Because what we're talking here is that this is a strategy that has been taught as part of the comprehensive soldier fitness program to help guys in the military be as psychologically fit as they were physically fit. And they only bothered including it because it works. I'm a good catastrophizer. And a lot of us, wave if you felt a bit like this in the last wee while, that there's a lot going on and our heads are pretty busy. And our heads can be scary places. So what I want to talk really quickly about is really simple strategy to stay in the now, a way to challenge our sometimes really shonky thinking, and how to stop catastrophizing. So the staying in the now if you or anyone that you're working with is panicking, or you've got really physical anxiety, box breathing is a really useful strategy. And I'm going to ask Greg to talk us through it right now, just to keep him on his toes.
Kia ora, Denise. So box breathing, as we know, it's the in, it's the hold, it's the out, it's the hold. And there's one of the challenges is ensuring that the hold and the out is longer than the in. So you can simply do it with the 4 counts in, 4 counts hold, 4 counts out. And I'd also encourage you to sneak a 5th count on the out, because we know from a breathing point of view, the out is more important than the in. And we always shorten the out in our spaces. So there's one thing you can focus on, particularly in the breathing space, is to give more out than breathing in into the space before you hold again for the 4. And it's just simply up, across, down, and out. Hence, they call it terming of box breathing. Here we are, Denise.
And Greg, the wahine toa in your life, her mantra is, if in doubt, breathe out.
Yep. The most important part of breathing is actually the exhale rather than the inhale, which I found quite interesting.
Yeah.
And more through your nose than out through your mouth.
Kia ora. So I knew you'd have stuff to add. So the beautiful thing about this breathing is it tricks your brain. Your brain's been going, and once you do about 30 to 60 seconds of this, the neurochemicals in your brain go, no panic, and they literally, this beautiful neurochemical cascade starts to calm you down. So very useful. The second thing I want to say is, you are not your thoughts. There's a beautiful metaphor from Buddhism that you are the sky, and your thoughts are just clouds that pass through the sky. And it's reminding you that just because you think something doesn't mean it's true. So if you've got some really shonky thinking going on, it's dispute it, challenge it, go, really? Where's the evidence? And then, and even if it's true, what are the implications? I can cope with a little embarrassment. I can cope with a mistake. And sometimes it's also, even if it's true, is it helpful to think about it now? Is it useful? So first of all, disputing it. Where's the evidence? And even if it's true, what are the implications? And is it useful to think about it now? Get that cloud out of the way. And then the last one is the catastrophizing. And I think a lot of us have gone to this place. I'm never going to, there's no money, we're not going to eat, it's going to be tough. And so some of us do go to the panic. I'll lose my job, I'll lose my house, I'll die in the street, my body will be eaten by dogs. That's grade A catastrophizing. So what we want to say to you is, if you're falling into worst case scenario thinking, all you do in that is panic and go, it's much more helpful to pull yourself back to, so what's the most likely outcome? And how can I make a plan for that? Because the thing we notice is that when we are doing our catastrophizing, it's just crazy thinking, and there's no problem solving or planning happening. It's really helpful to pull yourself back to, you might need to have a laugh, you might need to go for a walk before you can do this, but then so what's most likely and how can I plan for that? And I want to remind you that this is stuff that has been successfully taught to 9-year-olds and 10-year-olds. And one of the things that they use in a lot of schools is this idea of the catastrophe gauge. And you get these gorgeous, gorgeous kids who you go, what's happening? And they go, well, I'm acting like it's a 9, but it's probably a 3. And when you have a catastrophe gauge, all you've got to do sometimes is look, the person comes in going, and you look at the catastrophe gauge, and they look at the catastrophe gauge and they go, yeah, I am up there. And so the challenge to us is to say, I think we're right up the catastrophe gauge. Can we climb down? And to have some language around it. so that you don't all have to jump when somebody's off the top of the scale. You can actually, first of all, check in and go, is this appropriate? If it's an 11, feel free, all panic. But, if it's a 2, maybe we can help the person calm down. Sabrina Cohen-Hatton was homeless on the streets at 16, became a firefighter, worked her way up through a really sexist organization to become a fire chief, and now commands major fire situations. And they have to make really important decisions under huge pressure. And so she developed these, she thought, like, we need to be able to make good decisions, and came up with these questions, trialed them to see if they would help. They've been researched. They now are part of emergency services training in several countries. And they're really simple. It's, what am I trying to achieve? What do I expect to happen? And how does the benefit outweigh the risk? And the how is important there, because if I just say, does the benefit outweigh the risk? In my own head, I'll go with my own personal bias of my idea. Yes, of course it does. But how makes you look for evidence? So we'll share these with you afterwards. But the reason that they are so powerful is that what they remind us to do is to pull back to the big picture. They raise our situational awareness. They pull us out to what's going on around us. And they make us think about the consequences for us and for other people. Really helpful. The thing that I actually love most about Sabrina is that she says, yes, these are really useful. And these are really useful questions when that I ask when I'm in a firefighting situation, but I probably use them more often in my parenting. When I'm trying to get kids out the door to school in the morning and the wheels are coming off and people are losing the plot and I'm likely to lose the plot, these are the questions I ask. So we will share these with you, but just to remind you, they are, what am I trying to achieve? What do I expect to happen? Really good one for when you're about to read the riot act to a small child. And how does the benefit outweigh the risk? And then one other question that I would chuck in there is that you can ask at any stage, whenever you maybe notice that you're not performing at your best. Is what I'm doing helping or harming? And we can ask about, is it working? Is it helping or harming me, my relationships, or others around me? And whether it's coping with lockdown by excessive use of the news and doom scrolling, or being on social media, or binging Netflix till 3, or that 5th glass of wine or beer. And we always say, if I ask you, does the first beer or glass of wine help? Most people go, heck yes. But the research is really clear that, 3 and beyond, no. So those questions are really helpful. Just reminding you, that's what we've been talking about. And if you can use any of them and they're helpful for you, think about where you might fit them in your day. So before we leave, I just want to remind you that we can think of lockdowns as a season. They've got a beginning, a middle, and an end. This Rahui will not go on forever. And if it's feeling like Groundhog Day, a really helpful thing to ask yourself is, what's new and different? If it's feeling like Groundhog Day, this is a call to mindfulness and to be present. What's new and different? And I kind of have to think, if we had to go into lockdown in a season in New Zealand, spring is pretty beautiful. There's stuff happening, bursting out and growing all over. There's something to look at. So we will be coming out of lockdown. We may go back in again, but it's really important for yourself and for the people around you to remember that transitions are bumpy. Don't do them at speed. No matter who you are, it's not advisable to go off a 4-lane highway onto a dirt road at speed. Slow down, make the transition slowly, lower the bar for transition for a couple of days, and don't try and go full speed ahead.